Hello, and thank you for joining me again for this reading of Dash My Love. This is going to be part 3, and this will also be the final part. So, I hope you guys enjoy. The first thing Dash and I did was leave town. We hitchhiked our way to the train station, and from there, bought a ticket to Helena. On the train ride over, I figured out the cryptic message that Eric guy gave us. I woke up Dash, who was asleep on my shoulder. "What?" she moaned. I figured out what the guy, Eric, meant by singing in California. What did he mean? I think it means they're in Los Angeles. How did you deduce this? Well, LA stands for Los Angeles, and LA is both one of the words in the solfege sight reading technique, and also it's just a general term for singing. It's the last place they'd expect us to go, so I think we should camp out in the city for a while. So we got off the train at the next stop and bought tickets to my old hometown, Los Angeles. After a day-long ride to LA, we decided to meet up with my old friend John. Really resourceful fellow, even though he's poor as dirt and had a girlfriend for 10 years. Forgot to mention he's 30 years old, twice my age. It didn't take me long to find him. We kept in touch after I moved in, after I explained the situation. All I told him was Dash and I were on the run. The whole pony thing was a bit too difficult of a concept to grasp, unless it was told face to face. And he told us where his house was. When I walked to the front door, he grabbed me in an inescapable bear hug. After he dropped me onto the ground and I'd filled my lungs with air once again, I told him I had to elaborate on the situation. He showed us into his living room. As I explained, he would ask questions neither Dash nor I knew the answers to, like, how'd the portal close, and why do they want to kill all of you guys? When I was finished, John said, well, looks like you guys need to take them all out. Excuse me, what? I asked, shocked. You need to find a base and slaughter them. All of them. Then there's no possible way they could kill you. That makes sense, but it's really risky. A bit too risky for my taste. Well, you're not the one whose life is in jeopardy. Let's ask the lady what she thinks, then we'll go with what she decides. We both looked at Dash. She was sitting on the couch looking down at her feet. We should kill them. Decimate them. What? They killed Adriana. She was my first friend. They deserve to die. Well, there you go. We set off tonight. We arrived at the headquarters of the only pony shop. A bit obvious if you ask me. After a few hours of preparation, we had spent money on guns and whatnot and saved enough for the trip back, along with other luxuries, which was another grand. When we walked into the shop, we asked the front desk lady if we could see Eric. She escorted us into a living room. After we'd sat there for a while, Dash started to look sleepy. Her head was nodding, and I could tell she was fighting to stay awake. Hey, Dash, we need to stay awake. I'm trying to. I'm getting unnaturally sleepy too fast. Me too, said John. That's strange. I don't feel anything. I looked around the room for anything odd. There was a weird haze over the floor vents. I went over and placed my hand above one. They were running. I took a big whiff of the stuff. My mistake. I later learned it was the gaseous form of chloroform. I woke up in a dark room. It was made up of black bricks, with the only way outside being a thick metal door. John was still unconscious, his wrists in shackles on the wall. Dash was currently being held back by 4 men. "Run!" she had yelled. Only then did I look at and see 5 more men. Along with this, Eric was standing there with the daikatana at my throat. I did what I'd done to that guy that was trying to gang rape Dash so long ago. I kicked him in the chest. He flew backwards, knocking over the other 5 men behind him. I dug into my pocket and pulled out the revolver. Eric was now walking towards me. I unloaded 3 shots. That woke up John. Regardless, Eric simply raised his daikatana faster than I could watch and blocked all 3 of the shots. 2 ricocheted dangerously close to Dash. She yelped. Eric pressed the tip of the sword to my chest. "This," he said, "is a daikatana made out of bulletproof steel. And I'm the leader of this little group, so there's not really any way you can kill me with mere bullets." "But you just said you were just a messenger," Dash had said. "Oh, I wasn't lying when I said that," Eric replied. "In the tradition of this organization, unless you count the original kill with Booth, the leader never performs assassinations, which is why I don't want to kill you. I'd break the chain, but you tried to kill me, so it's gotta happen." He pulled back his sword. "No!" Dash screamed. I closed my eyes. I heard a thud, felt the rush of air, and then heard the sound of a sword stabbing through flesh. But I didn't feel anything. I opened my eyes. Dash was standing in front of me, a bloody sword blade sticking out from in between her breasts. Eric withdrew the blade. Dash fell down, and I caught her. It was the last time I would ever see her beautiful purple eyes. It was also the last time I would hear her voice. She reached her hand up and gently pulled my head down. She kissed me. Then she whispered, "I love you." Then her eyes closed. I gently set her down. Then I lunged for the revolver. That was as far as my sanity could reach. Next thing I knew, I was standing in the middle of the room with a bloody daikatana in my right hand and an empty revolver in my left. Dead and dying men were all around me. 3 of them were missing limbs and bleeding out on the floor. 2 had been decapitated. 4 had multiple puncture wounds in the chest. Eric's corpse was the worst of them all. He had 3 bullet wounds in his forehead, which wasn't on his body. All 4 of his limbs had been lopped off. His rib cage had been ripped open, and the organs beneath had been brutally eviscerated. I walked over to John and sliced the chains. He fell to the ground and ripped off the shackles. I hurried over to Dash's body. I pressed my hand against the sword wound in her chest to stop the bleeding. Then I checked for her breathing. It was there. Very faint and ragged, but it was still there. Jenna and I rushed her to a hospital. After examining her body, they discovered that Eric had missed her heart by mere millimeters. He had pierced her left lung, though. She was in a coma for 3 weeks. Then she died. Two days later, I was back on the old farm in Montana. We had just finished Dash's funeral. Her dad had agreed to bury her in the field directly outside my house because, as he put it, we'd been such good friends. There weren't many people. There was my brother, John, Dash's dad, some of his business friends who knew Dash, and I. It wasn't anything fancy. Just a few words, the burial, and the solemn goodbyes. 2 weeks later, we got the headstone. Nothing really fancy, just her name and the dates of her birth and death. The only thing that set it apart from the other ones is that I carved out a little compartment. In this compartment, I placed the last thing I would ever give to Dash. It was a short poem entitled, Dash, My Love. Alright. The epilogue. It's been 15 years since Dash died. I've married a unicorn named Janine. We have 2 kids, both unicorns. I've also destroyed the organization. My brother and I hunted them down and killed all of them. I'm not very good at conclusions and the like, so I just quoted some lines from an old song named Simple Gifts. I think they kind of describe Dash because none of these things happened to her. To be simple. 'Tis a fine gift to be simple and to be free. To be happy and simple is where you ought to be. Alright guys, that was the story of Dash My Love, a fic by RainbowDashian. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. Later.